for example 2, using trig ratios, we're going to start finding actual lengths using sine, cosine, tangent, and angle measurements of the triangles. So for just to remember what we are using for sine, cosine, tangent, remember SOHCAHTOA. So I think of it as some old hippie came around here tripping over apples. Now I know that means that sine equals opposite over hypotenuse. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, and tangent is opposite over adjacent. And if you remember, I had taught you guys how to use degree mode into your calculator. So if you have forgotten, when you get your graphing calculator, turn it on, and you want to go to mode, right there, and then you would arrow down and over till you got to the word degree, and you want to press enter. And then to leave this screen, we do second mode, and that means to quit that screen. So now you're back into the regular screen, and you could actually calculate in degrees the correct lengths and angles. Okay? So first, for letter A, from angle 48, we have to be able to label our sides. So from angle 48, this would be the opposite. This would be the adjacent. And here's my right angle, so this would have to be the hypotenuse. Now, we don't need the hypotenuse here, so I'm going to mark it out, because we need to find x, and we have 17 in the angle. So what we say is if we're using O and A, opposite and adjacent, then we would be using tangent. So we would go tangent of 48. So tangent of the degrees equals the opposite, which is x, over 17. Okay, now you have to think of this as solving a one-step equation. So if you had an equation that looked like this, in order to solve that, you would multiply both sides by 2, so that this cancels out and you're left with x, and this would be 14. Very similar. You multiply both sides by 17 to clear your fraction. Okay? So now, putting this into the calculator, okay, I would clear, I would hit 17 times tan 48, and then I close the parenthesis, which is right there below the tangent button. Okay, so 17 times tangent of 48, and we get 18.88, etc. Up here at the top, it does say solve for x and round to the nearest tenth. So that 8 makes that 8 round up to 9. So we're going to go with x equals 18.9. And since this is a side length, I'm just going to leave it like this. You could put units here. Okay, that would be fine, but it doesn't actually have any units on this. And right now, I think the biggest part of this is just knowing when to use sine, tangent, cosine, and how to put it into the calculator correctly to get your answer. All right, let's try again. So we got to label all of our sides of our triangle. So across from the right angle would be your hypotenuse. Across from 67 is the opposite, and next to 67 is the adjacent, which we don't need. So we're dealing with O and H. O and H would be sine. So I would say sine of 67 degrees equals opposite over hypotenuse. So now, to get x by itself, we're going to multiply both sides by 29, and then put that into the calculator. So 29 times sine 67, and then I close the parenthesis right here using this button right there, and then equals 26.694, etc. So 9 would make the 6 go up to 7, and we would have x equals 26.7. Okay, letter C. So here, across from the right angle is your hypotenuse. Across from 29 is your opposite. And next to 29 is your adjacent. So we don't need the adjacent. And if we have opposite and hypotenuse, OH would be sine. So I'm going to say sine of 29 equals opposite over hypotenuse, so 12 over x. Okay, so for this one we have a few more steps. So one, I'm going to have to multiply both sides by the denominator, which is x. So that cancels out. Okay? Then we're left with x sine 29 equals 12. So to get rid of the sine 29 and get x by itself, this is saying x times this. So the opposite is to divide by sine. Alright, so now I put this into my calculator, clear, and I'm going to do 12 divided by sine 29, close my parenthesis, so you can see there, and then we enter, and we get 24.75. So 5 makes 7 round up, and we would have 24.8. All right, moving on. For letter D, I'm going to label first. So right angle, across from that is your hypotenuse. Across from 33 is your opposite. Next to 33 is your adjacent. We don't need that. We do have opposite and hypotenuse, which means we're dealing with sine. Opposite and hypotenuse is sine. The sine of the angle, okay, equals opposite over hypotenuse. And as you can see, we have x in the bottom again. So to get rid of x, we multiply both sides by x. And this is our next equation. Now, to get the x by itself, x times sine, we have to divide by sine. Now, we clear out our calculator, and we've got 15 divided by sine 33, close the parentheses, and we get 27.54. Well, 4 makes the 5 stay, so that answer would just be 27.5. Okay, letter E. So here's your right angle. This is the hypotenuse. 72, we have across from that 25, which is opposite. And then next to it is adjacent. So extra here is the hypotenuse. And O and A, opposite and adjacent, they would have to be tangent. So tangent of 72 equals opposite over adjacent. So x is on the denominator. So we're going to multiply by x. Get x times tan 72 equals 25. So to get x by itself, divide by tan 72. So we divide both sides by tan 72. We're going to get 25 divided by tan 72. And we get 8.12, and so 2 keeps the 1 at 1. For letter F, I would go ahead and find your hypotenuse, so that would be right here, across from the right angle. At 43 degrees, this angle would be opposite of this side, and then 36 would be adjacent. So if I look at my sides, what would be extra information? The opposite. I don't need that. So if I'm looking at adjacent and hypotenuse, go back up here, and cosine has A and H, adjacent and hypotenuse. So I'm going to be using cosine for this problem. So I would say cosine of the angle 43 equals adjacent over hypotenuse. So now, to solve for x, we're going to multiply both sides by x. Eliminate that. And we have x times cosine 43 equals 36. Then to get x by itself, divide both sides by cosine of 43. So let's plug that in, clear, and then I'm going to do 36 divided by cosine of 43. So I get 49.2, which doesn't round, so we'll leave it 49.2.